Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Today, joining me on the episode of the DevReady podcast, I have Litsa Babaroglu. Thanks for joining me, Litsa.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's happy to have you on. I do not do introductions of the guests myself because I do a terrible job and I don't know anything about you. So I will let you take over and let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Well, I suppose I was really lucky because when I was finishing my VCE, which is a very long time ago, um, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So somebody said to me, I think I've been studying IT and I've been doing this subject called marketing and I think you'd really like it. And I went, that's as good as anything. So I enrolled and did marketing, and I've been lucky enough to love what I do for a very long time now. And I think it's a blend of creative arts because there is some creativity involved, and more so in the past than there is now. There's a lot more analysis that you can do now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's being able to be creative, but also being able to be analytical and work as part of a team, depending on which sort of space you're working in. But generally, you're working with a team, whether it's outsourced or whether it's in-house in a corporate environment. So I started off in the fast-moving consumer goods industry,
Yep.
and it was what you did in those days. If you wanted a career in marketing, you started off in fast-moving consumer goods. So the things that I loved were I had a great success with sorbent facial, which we relaunched the entire category, and that was engaging with everybody from the engineers to the finance people to the R&D people to the advertising agency. So it was a huge team effort, which was a big success for the company and also really highlighted to the MD what good marketing could do for a business. So that was pretty exciting, but I got bored working on facial tissues. So somebody said there's a job going in the wine industry. And I went, that sounds like fun.
Okay.
So I applied for the job and I became marketing manager for Yellow Glen. I knew nothing about wine, knew nothing about the wine industry. And I seem to have muddled my way through and worked on Yellow Glen, launched Yellow, which was the biggest, best launch of its day, won a couple of industry awards. And then I moved around in the wine industry from corporates to family-owned businesses to distribution companies. And then I decided that it would be a good idea to buy a small business.
Okay.
And that led me to the world of small business owners, starting up businesses, being all things to all people, and did that for a while. And then in 2016, I sort of had a break and I was trying to work out what I wanted to do next. And when I look back at everything that I had done, the thing that I loved the most was the creative aspects of building brands. So taking something, doing the analysis around what was happening, what people wanted, doing research, and then taking all of those insights and changing what you were delivering to deliver a better outcome for the consumer. And that's when I went and started Brand Divine. And basically I developed a process, a 6-step process that I take clients through, and it's industry agnostic. And that makes it exciting and interesting for me because I'm always working with people in different industries. But the one thing that it all has in common is a love of people. And when I get to know people and delve into what makes them tick and why they do what they do, it gets really, really exciting.
And that's probably the big focus of working for yourself. You've got a lot more variety in the people that you're working with, and you're probably spending a lot more time getting to know them and working closer with them than, say, if you were at Yellowtail or at Sorbent, I think you said it was.
Yeah.
So it's, having that at Sorbent, I'm guessing you never really would have seen the consumer too much, and you would have just been dealing with sort of management layers, which
Yeah.
complete
Yeah.
opposite of what you're doing now.
You're right, actually. I hadn't thought about it in that sense, but I'm very much a people person, and the work that I do is very intimate, in the best possible way. So I get to I get to really understand what makes people take the risk of being a business owner, of having an idea, of pursuing that idea and being passionate about it until you actually bring it to market. And that's the sort of the deep insights that we uncover.
Hmm.
And it also helps business owners understand that what they're doing is not delivering a service, but they're adding value to their customer. So
Yeah.
it's really getting them to focus on that. How am I adding value to somebody else? That when they get to that point, you can see that the lights just turn on and their whole physicality changes.
Okay. Yeah, that's something we believe as well. It's you have to be able to add value to whoever your customers or clients, however you want to phrase it, who
Yeah,
they are. Otherwise, why would they use your services or buy your products if they're not going to get some value from it? And that's the proposition for any brand, really, or any product that's on the market.
unfortunately, though, what happens quite often is people will, particularly in their, when they're first meeting other people, they're talking about, oh, I'm a software developer, or I'm an obstetrician, or I'm an accountant, but they don't actually talk about how they add value, how they change people's lives, essentially.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's in small ways, and sometimes it's in very significant ways.
Yeah. Touching on that accountant example, it's how much tax am I going to save you? Or how much am I going to get you back? That's
Exactly.
the key value. Like they can always rattle that one off as a first thing to people.
Yeah. So it's really trying to focus on how we can add value and what change we're going to deliver for people.
Yeah. So in your career of marketing, what sort of marketing are you focusing on? Is it sort of like the big campaigns? Is it branding? Is it the digital side? There's quite a bit to that marketing umbrella.
There's a huge amount to that marketing umbrella, and it's getting more and more fragmented as time goes on. So, what I love to focus on is brand story. And I'm a big believer in doing one thing and doing it well.
Hmm.
So, I focus on brand story, which is that 6-step process that I talked about. And we work through purpose and values, and we talk about brand name, and brand personality, differentiation strategy, positioning. And then when we have that defined, it means that there is a compass for the business in terms of the brand. So for brands where the brand and there's only one brand, it becomes essentially a roadmap for everyone that works on that brand, and it helps people create. It's a touch point for decision making. So if you're making a strategic decision, then I encourage clients to go back and look at their values and their purpose, and are they aligned with the strategic decision making? When they're recruiting people, the same thing. If they're outsourcing their services, so whether it be social media or getting somebody to write content for you, all of that needs to be consistent. So I encourage them to share that with the people that they employ, and that everybody is on the same page. So we're all telling the same story, whether it's the person who's picking up the phone in your office and answering the phone, they should be reflective of the brand. Their behaviour should be reflective of the brand. And the same thing for the person who's writing your content or developing your website. Everybody should be telling the same story, because when we do that, then we're actually building trust. And when we build trust, we then build loyalty.
And it is a lot more than just the logo
Oh
or
my
the
God,
name of your
yes.
business. Because I imagine that's what a lot of people think marketing or like brand story and what you're talking about probably starts and ends with.
I'm going to get on my soapbox. One of the things that is really hard, and it's really hard for business owners because you're trying to straddle so many different aspects of a business, is that people will throw jargon at you. and they'll say, oh, here's your brand, and they'll be talking about a logo or your visual branding, or, you know, you have to have tone of voice. And that's only one component part. So the really important thing is to have this overarching, for me, is to have this overarching brand story that is consistent across everything. And that for me is the brand. Then you have a content strategy, you have an advertising strategy, you have a social media plan, you have an activation plan. They're all the tactical aspects of marketing. The actual brand sits above all of those things. And as I said before, it becomes the roadmap or the compass for the business. You know, a lot of people will say, I was talking to somebody recently who said, oh, I've got a branding coach. And
Okay.
she, exactly, I was really curious. I'm going, really? So what does this person do for you? And she said, oh, you know, they make sure that all my visuals, they set up the visuals and they make sure they're all consistent. That's not a branding coach. That is somebody who's a visual strategist or a visual designer. So the word branding gets bandied about a lot, but what it actually means is something quite different to the way that it's used in the marketplace. So I think it's important for brand owners to be asking questions about what they're actually going to get.
Yeah, I think, yeah, a lot of people, if they've never been exposed to that as part of their career, or if they're a startup and they're trying to get something off the ground, or just a small business,
Yeah,
they don't understand what branding means. They think, all right, I
no,
need a logo, I need a website, let's get going. Then they start creating social media, and then they just start posting random things. Or now they may go to like ChatGPT and say, all right, I'm an accountant, write a blog post for me. But if
yes,
they had, like you're saying, the brand guidelines and the story, the brand story, they could put that in, and at least they get something to their tone of voice or in their that's more aligned towards how they want to be perceived, which is what from my understanding, the whole point of having a brand story and all those things in alignment are for.
it is. But it also takes some time to get to that point. So sometimes people who are literally starting their businesses will come to me and say, I want you to write my brand story. And I'll say, no, this is not the right time for that, because you need to go out and make sure that, you know, you've got a viable business, that the customer wants your product, that your product or service is viable, that you identify the correct target market. And once you have those sorts of things in place, and that can take 2 to 3 years in a lot of cases, then you can start to work on your brand story. And you will do all of those things that you just mentioned, because that's what we're told we need to do. What I would encourage people to do at that very early stage is to just, even if you don't have a brand story, say, this is what we stand for. This is what we believe in. This is how we talk to people. Just basic fundamental things that, again, you can share with everybody that touches your brand, so that at least you're getting some consistency. And it's okay to change. It's also always appropriate to pivot. But until you have those fundamentals in place and you know you've got a viable business, I don't encourage people to invest in their brand story at that early stage.
There's really just have that key guiding principle of what you stand for, why you're actually in business, and then build it off of that and move forward.
Yeah, exactly.
When people approach you and they're beyond that point that we just mentioned, now they've say been in business for a year, things are going well, they know what they want to do. How do they sort of know or think that they need someone like you to then start this whole brand story, or
It's funny.
to decide to move forward with it?
Some people don't. Quite often, it starts from a business problem. So, for example, I had a client who's a fractional CFO, and we were chatting, and she said to me she had two different businesses. So she would go to networking events, and she would talk about being a fractional CFO on one hand, and on the other hand, in almost the same breath, would talk about being an NDIS plan manager.
Okay.
And there was this complete incongruence, you know, in terms of the services that she offered. So for her, it was about how do you take these two things that she was doing, trying to run two separate businesses and bring them together in a cohesive strategy. So really that was the starting off point for her in terms of our conversations. I've had other clients who are occupational therapists who have been in business for 20 years, but the brand was them personally and they wanted to start to step away from the business. So that was their business problem. And it varies from person to person, or business to business.
So do you see more of a need when there's the face of the business, and then to be able to scale, they need to no longer be the face? Is that sort of when the biggest demand comes into it?
It's something that I really encourage clients to think about very deeply. And I also encourage them to step away from the brand as quickly as they possibly can, particularly if they have a vision and the brand is going to grow and they potentially want to sell it or they want to merge with another business in the future. At that point, it's really important for your personal brand not to be the same as the brand, because that's where you add value. So if I'm so closely aligned with the brand that I can't step away from it, then it's very difficult to make it a saleable asset, or it makes it much more difficult to be a saleable asset without you.
And that's a bit different than being sort of the face of all the content you put out.
Yeah, it is.
Or is it the same?
It's a little bit different. I'm a big believer that once you've written your brand story, that is really the guiding light for the business. And so you can come in and out, but so can your team. So your employees, for example, can come in and out, but you also need to have those people aligned, saying the same thing with what you want to be, the story you want to be telling about your business, about your brand. The same thing with referral partners. You want your referral partners to be clear about who you are and what you're delivering. It's not just your employees or the people you employ to write copy for you or build your website. So it's a balancing act. It's very much a balancing act.
Yeah, it's something that we're finding that. So at the moment, if you look on Air and Technologies or DevReady, you'll see my face plastered everywhere. I think I've made like 99% of the videos that we've ever created, and Andrew's got a bunch of them. Starting to make some more now, so there's getting that differentiation. But our faces are what's associated with our brand, I think, at the moment. But then, yeah, like you said, probably need to get more people in to start not just having the one consistent face constantly, because people may be sick of seeing my face as well. There might be some fatigue there with that, along with just not having it only one person.
Yeah, there's the fatigue factor, but there's also the diversity of how different people present. And I've seen some people do it really, really well, where they start to bring in employees who are sharing their knowledge and their expertise, and it adds to the credibility of the business overall. It's not just me and my business partner, both very nice people. I've met you both. But it does add to your credibility in a space as well, I think.
Yeah, I would, because then it shows you there's a broader team. It's not just the people that are up front talking that are knowledgeable. The rest of the team has experience and different point of view and perspectives to bring to the products and services, and ultimately more people to add value to who we're trying to provide value to.
Yeah, and you're also allowing you're connecting with a broader range of potential clients. So much as, we all think we're wonderful human beings, there are some people who we connect with better than others, who we resonate with better than others. So having that broader range of people to share information with enables you to then connect with a broader range of people as well.
Because, yeah, certain people may see my videos and not like me or the way I say something, but then someone else is there and then they tell them, they say, don't judge a book by its cover, but a lot of people do, and that's first impression. So
Absolutely.
That can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And while that can be a good filter, because it may get rid of people that you're not going to want to work with in the future, it may be, all right, they may get along better with one of the other people in your business and you haven't turned down a potential opportunity.
Yes, absolutely.
So what are sort of like the 6 guiding principles that you follow when you're building out the brand story and working with your clients?
The first is purpose. So why do you do what you do? And maybe that I tend to work with business owners. That's my preference, and
Mm-hmm.
that works. That is the most important thing, because for me, it helps do two things. It helps them understand the deep passion that they have for what they're doing. And generally, if you're a business owner and you're growing your business, you are passionate about what you're doing. It also helps them dig deep and understand what value they're really offering. So that's the first thing. Then we talk about values, which is very closely aligned to the purpose. And when we talk about values, we talk about emotional values and rational values. The reason being that we make decisions, we make emotional decisions, and
Mm-hmm.
then we justify them with rational arguments. So we search for both rational and emotional values so that they complement each other. Then we talk about brand name, and sometimes the brand name is completely inappropriate, does not add value, is not doing the company any favors whatsoever. So in that case, what I encourage clients to do is take a step back, which can be quite hard because this is their baby.
Mm-hmm.
And we then we work on different brand names, which is actually can be quite difficult, especially in this day and age.
Yep.
But what we look for is a brand name that is going to tell people what you do without you having to tell them. So
Okay.
I think DevReady is a fantastic brand name. I'm not just saying that, but it tells me
Thank you.
exactly what you do. You know, you shortcut that development process, and there is a system behind it, and that system increases the likelihood of success.
Yep.
There are some brands that have absolutely no relationship with the service offering or the value that business is offering. So in those cases, I very strongly encourage clients to literally take that step back, walk away from this, and then stop and think about how can you do better, which is
Okay.
that can be quite challenging for people.
I can imagine it's difficult, especially branding, because or the name of the business, because people get attached to it, and there's a lot of personal feelings there.
There's
It's
a
very
lot of
emotive.
emotion, very
Yeah.
much, and that's why you need to do some of that deeper work up front for them to trust you enough to actually have that conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
Then we talk about brand personality. So again, if it's been the founder, you want to be able to step away so that you can make this a saleable asset at some point in the future.
Yep.
And you don't want to be, anything could happen to any of us. So what you don't want to have is that business reliant on you being the face of the business. So that's why we try and step away a little bit. And again, some people find that's a stumbling block for some founders.
Okay.
Then we talk about differentiation. So how are you different from your competitors? And I like to bring a blend of differentiation strategies together. So it's more powerful and it gives
Mm-hmm.
them a greater competitive advantage. And then finally, we talk about positioning. So how is the brand positioned? And in terms of the positioning, the tagline that goes with that, and then also positioning in terms of your sensory values. So sight, sound, hearing, taste, and smell. And quite often when we get to that point, people think I'm a little bit crazy. But when I explain what all the impact of all of those things, and again, what consistency brings to the table, then people get really on board with it.
Okay. I've only ever heard of the sonic branding at that point. I haven't heard of the smell unless you're like a perfume company or you've got a product that has enough fragrance and aroma that can go with it.
Well, it does depend. For some businesses, it's not. We rank them in terms of
Mm-hmm.
importance to that particular client. But I had a client, for example, that was their obstetricians and gynecologists,
Mm-hmm.
and so the waiting room can be quite an anxious place. You know, you're waiting to see
Yeah.
a medical doctor, there's specialists, there's a whole lot of things that could be going on. So when we talked about fragrance for them or smell for them, it was very much about creating a space that made them relax. So using essential oils that would enable them to calm down, feel relaxed before they get in to see the specialist while they're waiting for their appointment.
And it makes sense now that you explained it. I wouldn't have thought of that at all. She
Well, and
mentioned that. I'm like, no.
it varies. It varies.
Yeah.
There are some people that, you know, it's very much about their personal perfume that they're wearing. So
Okay.
do you want to wear something that's cloying and overwhelming and people just take one step back? Or do you want to wear something that's a little bit more delicate and people are drawn to you?
Okay. Good points there.
They're all the things that you don't know until you know.
Yeah, exactly. I never would have thought of that. Now I'm going to be conscious of what cologne I'm putting on in the morning.
Absolutely.
So then the next point being,
Well, that's the 6 points.
that's a six. Sorry, I
That's
lost
the
track.
six.
I lost track there.
There's a lot to keep track of. There's a lot. But then we that essentially that positioning really ties up everything that we've worked on in the lead up to that. It's what I like to call the ribbon that we wrap on the ribbon on the present, and then we do a summary of key talking points so that again we make it easy for anyone that touches the brand or is engaged with the brand or represents the brand to be telling that consistent story.
Yep. So then they know how to use it, how to reference it, how to stay on point, and actually
Yes.
have it all relate back.
Yeah. It's all about consistency.
And that goes beyond just putting a logo on a picture that you're posting,
Yes,
which I'm guessing you
yes.
probably see a lot of.
But even your logo, you know, quite often we'll work with designers who will give you a set of brand guidelines. And I've had this with somebody who we worked really hard. We rebranded her business, fantastic brand story, brought her strategies together, worked with a great designer, a really fantastic logo that worked really well and aligned with the brand name. And then she gave that to somebody who just ignored it all.
Oh, well.
So they used the logo, but
Yep.
the brand guidelines, the visual brand lines that came with it were basically ignored.
So that'll be all the how to position it, what it should go against, which variation to use depending on where it's being used and things like that. I'm guessing probably in the world and what you've seen, Canva is like a great tool for these businesses because it allows them to do this stuff without getting people involved. But it probably also allows them to go on the wrong path very quickly because they can do it themselves.
Well, you know, I used to think that I was a designer. And, you know, I'm a frustrated person, a creative person. So
Yep.
I got hold of, I think it was Adobe Illustrator and thought I could do design work. I learned very quickly that I'm not a designer.
It's a
Maybe
very
an
different
art
skill set.
director. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially Illustrator. That's a very difficult tool to use. It's not photo editing in Photoshop, which most people think is already hard. It's,
No,
designing from scratch and making it the vectorized and all that sort of stuff is very difficult. That's where sort
extremely.
of, Canva commoditized a lot of the ability to be able to like layer what probably a graphic designer will do to a degree,
Yes.
but it allows you to get off brand very quickly because you can do it yourself and you don't know what you're doing half the time.
And sometimes you just, it's true. It's very easy to get off brand, but it's like anything, you know, particularly when you're starting a business and you're trying to do all the roles in that business, you do the best that you can. And
Yep.
Canva's a fantastic tool for that. As you progress and your business grows and you want to be seen to be more professional in all the aspects of your branding and marketing, then I believe that's when you go to experts. You know, yes, I can do a rough logo, but it's never going to be as good as somebody who's a trained designer.
Of course. So for anyone that's just starting out, what are some sort of key things you can get them to start thinking about to get in preparation for having or being ready to start that brand story journey?
So that's a really, really good question. I think the first thing is to take some time, not jump into something, quite often I'll hear people saying, oh, I had to have a brand name, so this is what I started off with. Take some time, stop and think about what, there you are going to invest time and money in a brand name. Try and make it the best brand name that you could possibly have. Take some time to think about who your target audience or target audiences are likely to be, because when you start, you're going to be trying different things. And each time you try something, there will be a degree of success or failure. So you want to have a range of options. You want to try them all. You want to see which one's going to be most successful. But be very conscious about what those things could be, who those target markets could be. And then think about your offer. Again, you start off with a great concept. Do you need to massage that offer to make it more appropriate to better meet your client's needs? And so that's a big picture perspective on a business. But branding, I think, is about being consistent. So try and be as consistent as you can possibly be, because it will then be easier to move on than if you're being one thing over here and then you're saying something completely different over there and you have a dog's breakfast.
Yep.
It's very hard to move on from that.
Yeah, I think the consistency is key in not just the branding, but also it's probably the marketing in your day-to-day. So if
Absolutely.
you can be consistent, it will just help with familiarity for your brand, especially if you're in the market. And then on the content side and marketing side, it allows you to consistently, or again, using that word, but repeatedly put content out that people will become familiar with. And then your brand grows from that as well with the reputation and what the marketplace sees.
Absolutely.
So if anyone wants to reach out and they're ready to take that leap, Litsa, how can they do that?
I play on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So people generally connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's Litsa Barbaroglu Branding Strategy.
Yep.
And I'm generally pretty active. So all they need to do is look me up.
No problem. And we'll also include your link to your profile and your website in the show notes, so then they can find it through the podcast app as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Litsa, it's been a pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It's been a great chat.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.